We're just getting set up here, making sure everything's working. Make sure I got some. There we go. Here, making sure everything's working. There we go. Okay, I think we got ourselves live streamed. And I can see myself and we'll be able to see comments, etc. So perfect. I want to give a few minutes for people to start joining. This is scheduled for 7 o'clock and there's a bunch of people that are stated to be interested to join. So I'll just give a bit of overview of myself before I start. So my name is Paul Hanrader. I have learned a lot of things through my own personal awakening process. And one of the most valuable things that I learned is how to stand in my trigger. A trigger is basically, well, we'll get into details about it, but it's one of those things that's very scary. It tenses up your entire body. And it gets you in a place where you're not present and you start dealing with energies that were not originally part of where you want to live every day. They're the scary spots. They're the stuff underneath that is kind of hidden in your shadow. But unfortunately, if you can't be able to look at those energies or to look at your shadow, you end up in these reactive kind of states. And this is what I want to come here to talk about, being in a reactive state. I'm sure everybody's had one. They've had a relationship or something and somebody triggered them, their partner, and they said something that they weren't meaning or basically kind of sometimes eviscerated their partner with some piece of their past or something just to push them away and get them to stop. And these energies can be massively potent and they have the ability to break up our whole world and other things. But most people don't understand why they're there. And that's what we're going to talk about here today. So I'll give it to 7:05 just to get a few more people talking, but I don't want to give dead air here. So why I've learned so much about this, bunch of different things. I've had my own personal traumas in my life, relationship wise, family wise, work wise. And each time I went through the experiences that I would call triggers, traumas, etc., I learned greatly from them. And as I'm awakening even more all the time, I'm also kind of channeling some stuff that is useful to make this process easier for people. I've got a very clear awareness and understanding of how our traumas work, how we're held back, how we get stuck, and then how relationships work, etc. So by learning these things through self-discovery, everything I'm going to talk about is stuff that I have learned and it works powerfully and it's massively beneficial. And I want to give this gift to people because I see so many people are in a state of waking up right now and massive traumas are coming to the surface and there's a lot of conflict going on and people are feeling that they're being attacked by the world and the universe and nothing's working out, when it's actually the opposite of that. The act of awakening, coming out of your shadow, becoming aware, enlightenment, all the processes that are part of our spirituality and moving forward are all about releasing us from our past programming, our past traumas, our past learning and experience, and then rising above it and seeing the world from a more brighter place. So we're coming up on 7:05. And I think I'm going to start diving in here in about another 30 seconds, and we'll get this party started. So just to begin, I would like the people that are online at this moment, just to look in and start to figure out a situation where they were triggered. And we're going to kind of go into the energy of that and just sit with it. It's not something I want you to get really invested in or really scared, but I want you to go back to a point that's fairly recent that you can remember where you became triggered and remember what happened in your body. So if you can prepare that just before we get started. It's now 7:05, so we'll start. So as I explained, I wanted to offer this training because it's the most beneficial gift that I've ever found in all of my spiritual awakening. It allows me to get through really tough situations, energies, traumas, fear inside of myself, etc. And I felt really called to share everything that I know about this, because I really want the people around me first to be able to have this gift so that they can explore themselves when these energies show up. And I also want it because I really feel I'm here to create a new version of society, a new way of looking at ourselves, a new way of interrelationship. And this is a course that should be given to every child once they go into school, once they start interacting with people, because the human experience is full of lessons, triggers, traumas, energies that start to shape us, I guess is the best way. Some of it's self-definition. It gives us victim consciousness. It gives us a whole bunch of other things that are meant to help us find ourselves, literally. So in my world, what I call a trigger is a point. Let's say you are having an argument with your partner. That partner is talking about something that brings up an emotion in you that makes you immediately in your body start to feel tense, scared, feel like you're being attacked. Things will start happening in your body, and we'll go into more detail later, but you'll start holding your breath, or you'll sit breath, and and you're just kind of like, and your whole body is tense. You can feel it in your chest, your arms, maybe your shoulders will come up, and you're going to feel some form of attack or some form of fear. And that doesn't feel very good in the body. And it just like a nightmare mode turned on, and that you're shutting off. And we're going to talk about the types of responses that are going on in the body. But that's what a trigger is. All of a sudden, for no reason that you know, all of a sudden you are in fear or some strong emotion and you don't know why. And most of the time we're just sitting there and we're hearing it and we're not liking the feeling in our body. So a lot of times we will just kind of lash out and say something bad to the other person, or tell them to stop or whatever. And if they keep pushing, it feels like you're getting nudged all the time. And this energy that doesn't denote the circumstances, because you just could be having a conversation about, I don't know, work or something like that, but all of a sudden it's bringing up a memory and an energetic imprint in your body that doesn't denote the circumstances. And for most people, they'll basically just yell at the other person, shut the F up, or push them away, or maybe slash and hack them using some form of pushback on them that they know is a trigger for them, to get them triggered as well. And then you end up with two people that are highly triggered, and then everybody's screaming, everybody's angry, everybody's frustrated, everybody's completely ungrounded, completely unaware. And sometimes people hit, sometimes people just use words, throw things across the room, whatever, but the energy is like a bomb. And sometimes these energies are the things that blow up relationships and get you to stop being with your partner completely, etc. And in the end, we go back and look at it and we're not even sure why we were so angry, why we were so triggered, why we were so troubled in any way, shape, or form. So these are the thermonuclear juices of most of our relationships, and the things that probably scare us the most, because it brings up so much energy, so much fear, anger, emotion, sadness, crying, and you're stinging from it for weeks afterwards. Now, what I want people to understand is, in my perspective, We are souls that are fragments of God, divine, source, whatever word you want to use, of a bigger collective. And we have come here in these bodies, basically as souls, and being highly energetic beings, to come into a space where we're having a human experience. And we're learning lessons from emotion, darkness, sadness, etc., because in non-human bodies, those things don't exist in the same way. And Earth is a very beautiful melting pot to go and explore ourselves and explore experiences. How would we react if darkness happened, if good, bad, whatever happened? We come and have these experiences. So we come in as an innocent little soul, and all of our veils are put in, and we can't remember who we are as the bigger. We're now in duality mode. We get into a human body, and we're born as a little child. Now, as we're learning, because now we know nothing, all we know is that we're this big, beautiful light, we get experiences as we grow up. Our parents teach us, and they start to explain to us how the world works and what's safe and what's not safe, and loving you, and all these beautiful things. Now, as you're going through your life, okay, let's step even a tiny bit back. I firmly believe, and it's very truthful inside of my soul, that before we come, we create these soul contracts. We come here with some lessons that we want to learn. And sometimes they'll go multi lifetimes trying to find these lessons, but it helps us become masteries as souls in human bodies. So we come here and we create soul contracts with people to have certain experiences. Sometimes it's traumatic, sometimes it's love, sometimes it's beautiful, but we create these experiences to start to guide us to look into parts of ourselves that maybe we wouldn't see. Now, some of these experiences can be very, what I call trauma. And to understand the human experience, you have to understand that certain things that are traumatic have been created by us in conjunction with other people to try and shape us and to get us to understand some of the lessons that we're here to understand. So trauma, in my experience, is basically a traumatic situation. We could talk about that fight before, but let's get to something cleaner. Let's say you started to walk down a dark alley, and even though your senses said don't do this or whatever, you walk down the dark alley, and all of a sudden a man came up with a gun, and he's holding it in your face, and he's all angry and screaming at you and saying, give me your money right now. And your body is instantly into a trauma response, and we'll talk about those in a sec. But you're shriveled up, you're scared, you're afraid, maybe you're crying, anger's coming through your body, you want to attack that person, but you're afraid that you're going to get killed. And all these energies that you never had 2 seconds before are instantly inside your body. And that man is screaming at you, maybe he's hitting you with the gun or whatever, and he's taking your money, and you're feeling violated, and you're feeling all these things. And with some luck, that guy just walks away instead of killing you or something. What happens after that? For the next 15 minutes, you're just sitting there going, like, vibrating and not knowing what to do, and afraid and scared and angry and all these things. And you're shutting down because you can't process all this energy in this moment. Now, what our protection response is we contract in our body and we start to squish all these emotions. And in my experience, and I can feel this in people's bodies and other things, so I know it's very true, these emotions become a giant ball of things like, I am not going to deal with that energy because that was so terrifying. I don't want to process these energies because feels like it'll kill you. So you build this ball, and then you just start pushing on it and pushing on it. Now, that ball is unprocessed emotions. Emotion, in my terminology, is energy in motion. So tears, sadness, crying, anger, frustration, rage, these are all things that are inside of us that are boiling, and it's a bunch of energies that may feel good, bad, whatever going on in our body. But these ones, you got a compressed, massive, huge dose of energy in that moment, and you're sitting with it. Now, our society doesn't support us in exploration of those energies. There'll be victim response groups and psychologists and all this kind of stuff. They will come in and they will try and desensitize us to it. And some will get you to kind of process it and other things, but they don't really work on removing the energy. So that ball stays there, and they'll come in, they'll poke it once in a while and little blips will come out, but they don't have the, like traditional anyways, there's a lot of spiritual practices that are coming out that have the ability to hold the container for that and help process that energy and realize that it's energy and start to make it moving. So I look at it as, okay, so now this is this splinter that's in our chest, that ball of energy, call it. So it's like you got a splinter, and every once in a while you're talking or you're moving around and you bump that splinter and it's like, ouch. And it's like, and that's a trigger. It's like something triggered that thing and you still don't want to look at it because it's scary and it's angry and all this kind of stuff. So what we start to do is what I call armor. And armor is basically a Band-Aid we put over top of that trauma. Consider it like first it's just a Band-Aid, but you still touch it and it hurts. And then over time, so the first thing might be like, I'm never going to go down a back alley or a dark alley again. I am not going out late at night. I am not. And we start putting these Band-Aids on, little rules that say, I'm not going to do that so that that never happens again. And the Band-Aids might also be like, I'm never going to talk about that again. That's scary. I don't really want to ever be around people that are going to want me to talk about that. And we start putting these Band-Aids on, and then we put a poultice and we put a cast on. And after a while, we got a wheelbarrow load of all these rules that are now trapping us in our body of what we can and can't do based on protecting that you'll never touch that little bubble again. Now, the weight of this keeps pushing it down and pushing it down and pushing it down and pushing it down. And after 20 years of that trauma being stuck in your body, you're going to find out you got about 5 feet of concrete or maybe more of armor that you put in. So that armor may all of a sudden go in and be attached. Let's say a person gets raped by their boyfriend or something, and they had this original trauma. Now all of a sudden that rape is like, okay, all men are bad and men attack, just like this guy in the back alley. And all of a sudden you got a rule, and now it's like, I can't even trust men, or I can't trust women. And these rules are building and building and building. And you don't even realize it, but you're getting more and more in a cage. It's like you can't go out to the bar anymore because there might be men there that might attack you because that's where it happened from last time. Or you set these bigger rules like all men are bad or all women are bad. And all of a sudden you have created in your space a cocoon that's protecting you. But at the same time, you feel the whole world's blocked off. Nothing's possible. Nothing ever works out. You're angry, you're angry, you're angry. And then you're wandering around during the day, and all of a sudden, let's say a man comes into your life and he triggers you on that because he says something or has an energy or he feels that way. And all of a sudden you're in that trauma again. Ugh, it feels bad. What do I do with it? Why is it here? Okay, now we got to step back. Your higher self has created this soul contract to have some of these things happen to you. And it wasn't good. And it hurt and it was angry and all this kind of stuff. But do you think your higher self is going to let you sit there and hide? No, your higher self is going to constantly prod you and give you experiences to eventually look into this and find out why. So we have this thing and we have all these rules and we have all this stuff that's closed us off and pushed us down to our dark night of the soul. And we have all this stuff in our genitals because that's the lowest chakra of our body, our root chakra, where all these traumas are. And then it has effects on things like our sexuality, our genitals, and our ability to have relationships with people. Now, all of a sudden, you'll get to a point where stuff is starting to trigger you quite often. And you're like, holy fuck, I'm just getting beat to hell. This world is awful and all this kind of stuff. Now, be aware that you're here to learn something. And what the universe will do is it'll put you in vibrational connection with people that are at the same vibrational belief as you, of fear, anger, victim, whatever. But you're going to find a person shows up that's either equal and opposite or has the same trigger. and you've got this soul contract, which maybe you don't believe or can be aware of, but all of a sudden this person knows how to just poke your buttons really bad and trigger you. And maybe you're doing the same thing to them. So there's these like two thermonuclear explosions happening, but I'm going to tell you, there's a gift in this. And if we are taught how to stand in our trigger, all the information is there to start to unwind this, but we have to be conscious enough to observe. So when that thermonuclear explosion happens and you're instantly triggered, I'm going to tell you a secret. If you dig underneath, 9 times out of 10, the energy that you're projecting at that other person actually belongs to a previous experience. So that bubble that's stuck in your genitals or down in your root is geysering out. Somebody poked it hard enough that it put a hole in the bubble and it shot right out, and you're right back in your trauma situation, in that dark alley, in the rape situation with your boyfriend. And all these things are ready to come up, but your body is not ready to have them. Your awareness is not ready to have them. So they're saying, shit, this is scary. I got to stop. And I'm either going to do one of 4 things. So we're going to talk about what trauma responses are. So when your body gets triggered and you're poking a trauma, there's 4 different states of trauma response. There's fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. And we'll talk about each one of them. So fight is, all of a sudden your warrior comes up, all this rage comes up, and you want to friggin' scream and punch and hurt and do whatever to get that thing to stop. That's not very beneficial when it's our partner or somebody we love, but the rage and darkness, because you've never looked at it, never sat with it, never tempered the energy, can hurt. And there's a lot of domestic violence and other things that are going on where spouses are hurting each other, and it belongs both. I've heard, and I know that that happens both men and women. So that's the fight response. It's like hit, get them to pass out or run away. And you're at least then not going to have to deal with that energy. Now, the next one is flight. Well, flight is really easy. It's like, I'm running away. A lot of people will run away, or they'll just not want to talk about it. And they'll just sit there in their trigger and just be scared and angry and just walk to the other room, refuse to have a conversation, bottle the energy up, or maybe just go in the other room and cry and cry and cry. That response can be healthy too. Sometimes when you step away, you're not getting the gift of dealing on both sides, but at least you're maybe letting some emotion out. Flight is usually less aggressive and more instant. It's just like off switch, I'm getting out of here, and hopefully you can find a safe place, and then you process. So that's where a lot of people end up processing. The next one is freeze. So freeze is the energy overwhelms you and you just sit there and you don't know what to do. You can't do anything. You're just like, it's happening again. I feel the energy, the fear, all this kind of stuff. And your body just can't take action. And there's a bunch of levels of stuff underneath that. Like if you don't want to fight, or you're scared of your power, or you're scared you're going to hurt someone, or you have no safe place to go, this can be the default. And it happens to a lot of people, and it's very normal, but I'm going to teach you some tools to help deal with this when this happens. The next one is fawn. Fawn is like the baby fawn of a deer. Fawn is basically usually more of a, in my experience, a learned response, where if you're constantly getting into the situation where you're being traumatized or poked or attacked or whatever, you learn a way to deal with your attacker, perpetrator, whatever you want to call it, to give them what they want so the minimum harm happens. So you'll just basically say, okay, I'm here's my wallet, and oh, what else can I give you? Here's my watch, here's my whatever. And you're instantly in this state of just giving, just to get it shut down and stopped as quickly as possible. That can also happen in sexual abuse, where someone is a dead no to it, but they're they're triggered in their energy, and they'll proceed with an act that just got it over with, and then they'll feel violated afterwards. It's an energy that's happening more often than we can probably even imagine. It happens with our boss. It's like, okay, well, you want to your boss is yelling at you and telling you how much of an asshole you are and got to get your work done and all this kind of stuff. There's a party that's really angry, but there's another part that says, fuck, I need this job and I got to get the money or else I'm going to lose. So you'll just fawn and you'll just give what your boss asked, and then he'll get off on constantly being angry to you, and you'll create this thing where eventually you're gonna lose out. So here's what's going on underneath, right? We all have traumas, and I'm going to say most human beings on this planet don't even know what some of their traumas are, but I'm going to say I don't think you can even come to this planet right now with the way the world was created without agreeing to have a certain number of traumas injected into your experience so that you can be controlled. It's a societal thing. It's part of the darkness on the planet, but it's basically you have to have that wound, or you have it in your epigenetic lineage. So your parents have it and your grandparents have it and all this kind of stuff. And those wounds are injected into you. For example, let's say your mother had a sexual abuse as a child. The likelihood that you'll probably have a sexual abuse if she didn't heal it for herself is probably much higher, because her beliefs and the things that she's teaching you will have that wound joined into it. So some of these things that are happening to us, we didn't even have a choice in. They came in, or we built it as part of our soul contract, and we're basically living out certain wounds, and a lot of us have sexual wounds that basically allow darkness to steal our pleasure, and the societal conditioning goes in and tells us how and when we can have partners, and whether we're sluts or gigolos or whatever energies, because we're expressive in our sexuality, where the whole world wants to close it off and make it this thing. Anyways, we're not going to go down that path. So essentially, we're walking around with these, what I would call an unexploded mine inside of us, of just waiting to have somebody poke that thing, because we didn't come here to die and stay small. We came here to rise through these things. So you're basically an unexploded time bomb of these things showing up. And now we've all experienced it. I said at the beginning, let's spend a second. When's the last time you had a trigger? And I want you to just go inside your body for a second, maybe close your eyes and feel how that felt in your body. Where was the trigger? So closing my eyes, my trigger a lot of times just starts right in the center of my heart. It makes me crunch my shoulders in. Sometimes this will come up. My tongue will go into the roof of my mouth. My jaw will tighten, and you'll see my face flush, and I may start curling my toes or closing my fists. And it's a really, really uncomfortable experience in my body. And at first, there's not a lot of conscious thought. It's just like fucking blind, excuse my French, blind rage, discomfort, emotion just coming up, and it's sitting there, and the person's talking. Maybe I'm hearing bits of their words, but a lot of it is now visceral inside of me, and I feel out of control. I feel my body is responding without any conscious thought, and that I'm not driving the boat anymore. That's a pretty uncomfortable feeling. And it's happening to us probably guaranteed dozens of times a year or whatever, but sometimes they can be even small at work, or your kids are saying something or whatever, and all of a sudden you'll just blurt out something or get angry, and why aren't you listening to me or whatever, and now you're going back to your childhood trauma of when your parents told you couldn't do that very thing, and here your kids trying to do it again, and they have to be the same as you or else whatever. And then this energy from something your parents did to you in your childhood is coming out at your own children. Now, this can be beneficial. This can also be very unbeneficial, because now all of a sudden you're like spanking and hitting and hurting and just giving that exact same trauma into your lineage, into your kids, into your partner. So it's very, very critical. We have some tools to start to dig underneath. What the hell's going on here? Why am I out of control? Why am I not even consciously aware of what I'm going to do? All of a sudden you're realizing you just hit or spanked or whatever. And you're like, where the frick did that come from? So let's start to understand this. So we're in this trauma, which is teaching us something, and it's very strong and energetic, and it has a lot of energy and emotion with it. And it's waiting just to show up. And it's going to come up when you least expect it, and it's going to be very strong. So what I'm asking you to understand is, in that moment, remember that trigger feeling you're feeling. Now, just by looking inside and having awareness, you're starting to be aware that something else is going on. There's this bubble down low. There's a tightness in your body that is waiting to be expressed, but you've shut down the ability to have it be expressed, which is very normal, and it's okay. So what do you do in that moment? Now, you're sitting in that moment. Like I said, you're tight, you're sipping breath. Your literal body is trying to almost kill itself, because if you're only going and your heart's pounding and all this kind of stuff, you're going to get into this place of carbon dioxide overload, and it's even going to make it worse, because now all of a sudden you're like afraid you're going to die, and all these things are happening and you can't be consciously aware of them because you're so embroiled in the energy. So what I want people to start to become aware of is, in that triggered state, there's a gift. And the only way you're going to be able to find the gift is to become deeply, deeply aware of what's going on in the instant. So it requires a couple things. So first, if you're feeling triggered and your partner's not aware of it, the first thing I would recommend, now you're going to have to figure out if it's safe to do this or whatever, but is to step back. Put your hand up, maybe, because maybe your words won't come up. Take a deep breath and just step back and just say, hold on. Because maybe that's all you can say in that moment. You don't have no idea of what's going on or why it's happening or what's hurting you or who's hurting you. And I want you to step back. Firstly, if the other person's getting triggered and then they're in their fight response or whatever, I want you to be far enough back that you can start to step back even further or step away from a fight response. Secondly is just breathe. What's going on? Oh, get some breath down low. Spend a second while your hand is out to start to get back, because really your energy is going to be out of your body and it's going to want to run away and it's going to want to scream. Here, you're consciously giving yourself some space to get safe. You're consciously bringing some breath in, and you're going to start to, hopefully you can find the place, and I guarantee that this isn't easy, but then start to ground. If you know how to ground at all, it's basically just put some roots out from the bottom of your feet to the bottom of your spine and just go into the ground while still breathing, and just start feeling your body. Let that energy into your body, not chasing out the top of your head and wanting to run away screaming. Just feel it start to be embodied, rather than hide it down here and be lost, and then it tries to expand, and the only way it can go out is the top, because you're so compressed, you're scared, you're trapped. Just take a breath and just let it be felt in your body for a second. And it's not probably going to feel comfortable, but I'm going to tell you a secret. In time, there's a feeling, we kind of are trained that fear is that feeling of change, churn, expansion, but there's actually something else happened. There's an exhilaration that's going along with the fear and the other things that are going in our body. I want you to start to look at it as like you're on the roller coaster and you're just come over the top and you're feeling that energy come up, and it's half terrified, half whatever, but you're committed. You have to go to the bottom of the roller coaster. You survived it last time. If you can start to look at this state as that is something changed and a lot of energy is going on and a lot of stuff that I can't control is going on, and just feel it. Now, sometimes it may be safer to walk away but stay in that trigger. Don't like, I got to stop or whatever. Just walk away. I need some time. That will give you time to start to sit in your body, start to feel the scared, the anger, the whatever, and just start to feel it. And then the next step is to kind of step back and just start to observe, start asking questions. What am I feeling? Where's this from? When did this happen? If you're too closely engaged with the person that just triggered you, you might not be able to have that awareness because you're trying to still communicate. But once you start to do the part for you, which is starting to understand why you're triggered, what's the anger, what's the unsafe situation you're in that probably has nothing to do with the energy that's going on. Just compare it. It's like, okay, my partner just said X, but I am freaking wanting to kill him. Why am I so angry? Start asking, just sit behind, your body's sitting there. It's why am I so angry? And once you get more comfortable with it, you're going to start to get an answer, or you're going to get a feeling in your body or whatever, and go into that feeling. And it's like, oh, I got pain in my side, or I've got this. Why am I so angry? What's going on? What is the emotion first? Is it anger, fear, frustration, sadness, whatever? Start to get in touch with that. Allow permission for that energy of that really strong emotion to enter into your body, just to be explored. Doesn't mean you're going to stay there. It's just you consciously choosing to sample that energy. I'm going to tell you a really cool secret. If you can go in a safe space where maybe somebody's holding space for you, or you're by yourself and you feel safe enough, if you can go and experience that emotion, let's say it's sadness, to its fullest extent, let it go in your body and let it feel from head to toe, and just cry and shriek into a pillow or whatever you need to do. Feel it for 90 seconds until you feel completely empty, like you're just like screaming, and you get to the bottom and there's no breath left, and you're just like, oh, and just let it go past that point, and then done. That 90 seconds is all that a really, really, really strong emotion needs to be felt before that emotion will be expressed. That energy can now leave your body. But if you're like, and you're crying and you're constantly pulling the energy back in, no, just open your throat and just let it go. Then a magic thing happens. The charge of that part of the emotion will start to pass. The sadness, the grief, whatever, feel each one. Rage is another one. Anger, wanting to hurt them, all these kind of things. Feel that in your body, because we're trying to break down that bubble. That bubble is the very thing that's trapping you. It's making it impossible to move forward in your life. It's contracting you. It's got you in fear. It's got you in victim. It's got you in all these things that are no longer serving you. So your higher self is bringing people that have the ability to poke that and asking you to step to the next level of your self-mastery to start to explore those energies. Now, it can be easier to work with a coach or somebody that's comfortable with this, and we can go through it and get the tools used and coach people. It's like, hey, you're stopping breathing right now. Hey, you really need to ground. And then here, feel it. And then once they've kind of coaxed you through the process, all of a sudden you're going to have this terrific, magical tool to start to feel your deepest, darkest emotions and start to look at those things that are down in our genitals that have this 50 feet of armor on top. Now, the magic is, consider your traumas become these little bubbles, and they're like the pier blocks on a bridge that are across a river. So they cast these concrete blocks, and then the pillar that supports the bridge up above goes on each of these blocks. Well, your armor is built on each one of these traumas. And what we need to understand is, if we want to start breaking down the armor, the easiest way to do that is not to unwind every single piece of the armor, because that would take 50,000 years. That's what I think psychology does. And it's not beneficial in this way. What we need is to go and express the emotion, look at those places, look at the situations, and start to release them. Once those pier blocks disappear, what happens to the bridge? The bridge and all the armor starts to break down. And all of a sudden that foundation isn't there. Eventually it's going to go, and then all of a sudden you're going to be like, why am I scared? Why am I making these rules? Why can't I go in a dark alley anymore? Why can't I do these things? Because all of a sudden those stories don't exist unless there's that emotion stuck down there. And those emotions, when they're really strong, they make a really good foundation and tons of armor, but we're so limited in our life, we don't know what to do. So now we either got to hit bottom and have those things implode and a dark night of the soul, which feels really awful, or we can start to work with the things that show up in our experience to try and just poke gentle holes in our trauma so that we can start bubbling. And then having a community of people around you that believe in releasing of trauma, how to bubble a person off, how to hold them accountable, how to make them self-responsible so they're no longer considering themselves victims and, oh, all I do is ever get raped, or all I do is get attacked and nobody ever respects me or whatever. These are all traumas. And if we can get people to say, okay, well, you keep being the victim there, well, take your power back. It's like, this is teaching you something. What's the thing underneath that'll teach you? And I'm going to tell you, once you can get to that base point where you figure out what the lesson was or where the root was, oh, it is magical, because now all of a sudden this darkness and all these bad things that happen all of a sudden become the lightest light. It's like, frick, I couldn't have been this person if I didn't figure out these things. And if I wouldn't have had these really traumatizing situations, I probably wouldn't have looked deep enough to be able to move forward. So this trigger thing, these traumas are the fire that tempers your metal. That I don't know if you know much about metalworking, but you put it in the fire and you get it really hot and then you quench it, and if you don't, it gets brittle and it doesn't make a good sword. But if you do it the other way, guess what? All of a sudden that metal is like 100 times stronger. And that's you. That's you going through all these things and getting through all this. Now, as you become more self-mastered in you, there's going to be an opportunity when you get triggered by your partner and they say something, and you're going to go into your place and you're going to observe and you're going to be grounded and you're going to breathe and you're going to see something about them that maybe they can't see because they're in their trauma. And you're going to be able to, from a place of self-love and love of them, you're going to, instead of lashing out, you're going to say, why do you keep speaking about this? Is that something to do with your mother? Is that something to do with your father? And you're going to find out they are trying to search down and find their same bubble that's down in their body, and you're going to help them expose it. And if you can get to the point where you teach that partner the same thing and you can start to communicate, you're going to find out, did you have similar traumas? Oh, my mother did that to me all the time. Oh, my dad did that to me. Oh, I was raped by a woman or whatever. And you're going to find out the traumas by sharing them and being vulnerable and starting to take responsibility for your part in them. Magic starts to happen, because now the universe only sent you people that had similar things. And by having the strength to communicate and not lash out and to be self-responsible and to calm down, you're going to be able to say, there's something funny going on with my dad. Can I talk to you about it? I know you're triggered too. And we're going to get through this. And all of a sudden you have this beautiful partner that's ready to start talking to you about this thing. And they're going to say, oh shit, that same thing was happening with my mom. I really felt like this. Because your light vibrations are there, it's guaranteed there's a gift for both. But most people will scream and yell and traumatize and not take the gift any day because it meant being self-responsible. Our world teaches us to be victims, to run away, that people, we got to please people and all this kind of stuff. And it's keeping us from finding the gift. So if we can find a place where we can get self-responsible in the moment, start to breathe, the first 4 or 5 times is going to be a little edgy, but you're going to find out after a while, it's so calm in that place. There's this beautiful possibility in that place. And you're going to start to recognize yourself differently. And that's another gift. Once you have that power, that self-mastery, you know how to go into your rage, you know how to go into your fear, you know how to go into these things won't overwhelm you anymore. I'm going to tell you, eventually you got to take all your rage back and all your stuff that's power, because we're as much dark as we are light. And if you're stuck on being a really good person all the time and you're an angel and all this kind of stuff, how can you be a part of God if you don't take responsibility for this stuff? And I'm going to guarantee to you, whether you've had some kind of rape or violence or whatever, you've done that to another person in a past life, or it's happened to you, you have that experience. Eventually, you're going to find out that there was a trauma behind them and they were forced to do that. And eventually, you're going to see them as maybe a child that has a whole bunch of wounds and they had to be a robber, they had to be a rapist, they had to be a whatever. It's going to take some time to get there. But by taking self-responsibility for our part first, magic starts to happen. So getting calm, understanding the energy's intense, but the minute you can stand in that fullest expression of your energy, and it just lights your body up. You're just like this. And instead of screaming and running away and yelling, you're just feeling big and powerful, and all this rage is coming and tears are coming down at the same time. And then you're going to understand that that's all of you, and it all came out of the cage, and you have a choice in that exact minute, whether you lash out, you do a trauma response, or you just breathe and feel yourself, experience yourself with those energies inside. And it may not feel in control, it may not feel good, but how are you ever going to feel good with them unless you get experiences to go there and explore that edge? Now, some of the things that I want to do in community, there's the Living Your Light community, Awakening Through Sexuality communities. I want to build spaces where we can go and get purposely triggered with other people in held containers, so that you can have somebody that's done this work and they can sit there beside you and say, okay, you got to breathe right now. I can see you not breathing. And and it's like, okay, ground now. Step back. Okay. And now all of a sudden they're like, oh, okay, something's going on here. How does that feel? Oh, it's scary as hell. Well, there's another energy in there too. It's like you're expanding and you feel really powerful, and like maybe you want to hurt someone or whatever. But when you cage your rage and you cage all those things, it's not in balance. So all of a sudden it's going to want to be that. But if it's released and you go to a place where you can start to express those energies and those emotions, you're going to find your center point. Instead of being leaned over here, oh, I'm an angel and I'm a light worker and I'm doing this all the time. I'm going to tell you right now, you're going to have to sit over here a little bit in your personal space. You don't need to do it with other people, but go hit something, go do whatever, go in your own space and feel that darkness, feel that rage. And then eventually when it's going to come up, you're going to be able to go, oh, you aren't going to fuck with me again. The rage comes out, the power stands up, the warrior inside is no longer out of balance. And you, as a full range of light worker and the ability to go dark, whether you choose to or not, that's different. But sometimes that dark is the very thing that gives other people good experiences. So is it really bad? And the lightest light is the darkest dark is the lightest light. You're going to find out that you would never know what was good or light without knowing what was bad and dark. So all of a sudden the two have to come in parallel to be able to find this balance. So to teach people to step into that energy, that discomfort, that trigger is the deepest, most amazing gift you can ever receive. You will never again be stuck in a situation where you don't feel like you've got some choice. Those fawn, flight, freeze, I think I got them all. Those situations are less and less a response because now you're in your power. Your warrior can sit there and say no longer being in fawn and saying, I don't want to feel this energy. I'm going to feel this energy. My warrior and my dark and my anger is all going to come up, and you are not touching my body in any way, shape, or form. And the energy requiring you to get there, the soul contract, eventually will be broken, because it'll be like, holy frick, your higher self says, you figured out something. You're not going to be a victim anymore. You're going to have strong boundaries. You're going to learn to speak. Guess what? We're unwinding all this stuff that our parents taught. Oh, children should be seen but not heard. Don't please me, or don't do these things. These are all inserted to us when we were young, or part of our family lineage of traumas. And we're here to clean that all up for everyone. So you could have 1,000 years worth of different things that are bearing out in this lifetime that allows you to clean that up, and then eventually have that lesson. And then you can share that lesson with your kids. You can share that with people around you, and a magic thing happens. But you wouldn't have got it without some really hard pressure because we're a little complacent. We're taught to be complacent. We're taught to hide in our trauma, and it's acceptable, and that self-defines us, and it gives us a position in society when really it was there a bunch of control. So I'm open to questions, by the way. I'm starting to get close to the end of what we were talking about. I'm going to review what happens when you're in a trigger or you're feeling your trauma come up, and just make it kind of point form. I'll maybe put it in the notes of the video as well. But basically, first is you have to recognize that you're in trigger. What's that feeling in your body where you feel completely out of control? You feel it all tensing up, and it's not an energy in alignment with what's being said or what's happening. So first is recognition. Second is stepping away. And like I said, this is something you're going to have to assess for yourself. You can't be with a robber in the middle of the back alley and a gun's pointing at you and you're just like, I don't want to deal with this right now, and just walk away. No, but if it's your partner and the energy is triggering back to something really intense like that, and it's just words he's saying, and you have the option to step back, hold on, and then step back. Start to feel the energy in your body. What's going on? Is this anger? Is this fear? Is this, and just ask the questions. What am I feeling right now? And it's going to be really weird because your body's going to start to respond, and it's going to be really happy because you haven't responded before. You just shut off and said, no fucking way am I going to talk about it. So your body's teaching you what these things feel. So what's going on? Is that rage? Is this anger? Is this fear? Is this grief? Is this whatever? Any emotion can be in there. It can even be happy and other stuff because it gets mixed up. Then start breathing. Remember, we're sipping, and if we're sipping, our body gets into this carbon dioxide kind of terror because we think we're dying. So you got to take a deep breath. Ooh, if you can release with sound, all of a sudden the emotion is going to start coming up. That may not be possible if you're in a public place, but breathe really deep right into your root and let it go. And then feel those grounding roots go into the ground. Just get so that you're completely present in your body. You're still feeling that energy. You're not throwing it away. You're not running away. You're not getting overwhelmed by it just yet. And just start being aware. I like to sit back about 5 feet behind me and in a chair just above and look at my body. What's my body doing? It's like this, and bright red face and tears and anger and all this kind of stuff. Just ask, what's going on? What's going on? Where did this start? Why? What's this energy? Does this energy even belong to the situation? And you'll get an answer in your body. If you allow it, it'll be like, no, that was my dad. No, that was my last partner. And it's like, fuck, look at this energy that is still inside me that I can't interrelate to my last partner, the person that did it. So you are now in this conscious awareness of something that you weren't completely aware of because you turned it off. And there's this beautiful space. This thing is killing you. It is closing off your life. It is forcing you to not do things. It is very unhappy. It could be a little child you feel. It could be your 3-year-old self or your 8-year-old self going back to children should be seen but not heard because your parents told you and you didn't know any better. You couldn't speak up. You couldn't even have a boundary with that partner. You couldn't say no. You couldn't say, I don't want that or whatever, because all these things in our past told us not. So now all of a sudden you're looking at it and you're saying, what the hell is going on here? And now if you've got a partner that's kind of balanced in this and they're willing, you can maybe have a conversation and say, hey, shit, there's some stuff coming up with my dad. Can you listen to me while we go through this? He may not even know that he triggered you, and it's just a calm, gentle thing. And he's fully ready to receive and hold that space and clear it up. And there's an opportunity to communicate. It's like, be vulnerable about what you're feeling. And your partner in that space, if he was there to trigger you, he may have been divinely called to give you this gift. But that gift is fucking rage, anger, frustration, worry, whatever in your body. And you're like, why the hell did that even happen? That feels awful. Guess what? You're becoming aware. You're becoming enlightened. This thing that closed off your root chakra and your sexuality and all these rules and all these things, you're now seeing it. And that partner, gave you the gift of seeing that, but it might have been through rage. It might have been through anger. It might have been through all these other things. So start to look at it. And if you can get into self-awareness and control, maybe after that, you're talking with a partner, but after you want to go back and sample being in that place. And now in your own bedroom or whatever, sit in your rage, sit in your fear, sit in your pounding your pillow, get that anger out, that emotion out for at least 90 seconds. And when you do, guess what? You heal. That trauma off gases and those bridge pilings starts to implode. And there's a gift that comes there. Your life begins to open. It might be a little scary for a while. And that's why I want to build community around this, where when your psyche is giving up all these rules, you want to have supported people that have been going through the same situation or in the same trauma. And then you can say, oh, I'm not dying. This isn't me dying or whatever. This is me opening and exhilaration and expanding. If we can get to the point that our triggers don't control us and own us, that's self-mastery, because you're feeling the strongest energy in all possibility. And now you're starting to get self-mastery. Somebody can say something and you're going to be able to speak your voice now. It'll be like, no, I don't want any part of that. Or your boss comes up to you at work and is just being really asshole or whatever. You look them in the eyes and you say, no fucking way. We're not going to continue this. You're going to respect me and we're going to have a conversation. He'll be like, whatever. And all of a sudden his trauma is going to be coming up and he's probably going to be triggered. But it only happened because you guys were sharing an experience. He needed to poke you and maybe you needed to push back. Maybe his gift is in a couple of weeks when all of a sudden it's like, I'm really sorry I spoke to you that way. I had to look at some stuff with my dad and I had to look with stuff with my mother. And really, I thank you for speaking back to me. But if you get too overwhelmed, maybe you might lose your job or something, but maybe that was the thing that you were supposed to do. Because if people aren't doing the work, you're only just going to keep getting poked and traumatized by these people. And sometimes it's best to walk away if the lessons aren't being absorbed. So I don't want to be too long and too wordy. We're coming up on an hour now. I just have some notes. I'm just trying to make sure that I covered everything, but we're going on a journey of freedom. We're looking at all of our traumas, all the darkness that has been propagated on us, to try and see how that was giving us a lesson, teaching us something, teaching us awareness of who we are. Maybe we got bad boundaries because our parents taught us that. Maybe I don't feel safe expressing my warrior. Maybe I can't defend myself. Maybe I'm not listening to my intuition. These are all things that your higher self and the universe was trying to teach you so that you could be your fullest, highest self. So all these things that are scary and bad and really intense energy and all this kind of stuff can be seen as gifts, or you can sit there and be in a victim to them and say, this always keeps happening, or start to find a container, a space, people you can work with to start to understand that part of yourself. And that's the work I do. That's called shadow work. That's stuff I work with other people. I also teach a modality called Awakening Through Sexuality, where I teach people to get back to their self-pleasure. And the orgasmic energy that's part of an orgasm can actually wash out those bridge pillars and those bits of trauma just as much. We can get into talking about working with women. You can actually feel nodules inside their bodies. When you touch them, they'll go right back to the trauma. So I really believe we can do this process of working through our triggers, or we can be taught to get back to our self-pleasure and use the orgasmicness to help pop those bubbles and make it pleasurable. And then those things are less intense. You don't have to feel all the energy, but some people have had orgasms where all of a sudden they're terrified, they're angry, they're whatever. If you can have a held space with your partner and you understand this process, you can release it all through bliss, orgasmicness, use the pipe cleaner energy of orgasm to push all these things out and start to free yourself. So it doesn't have to be all this intense stuff. It can be sexuality. Why have they repressed sexuality? Why have they taken it from us? Because there's a very important healing tool in there of moving our energies, getting out of sudden depression, getting us oxytocin and serotonin and all these things that all come naturally in our body when we're feeling pleasure. So that's what the Awakening Through Sexuality is. I have a group called Living Your Light Community on Facebook. I'll put it in the bottom here, but it's a community that's aware of these tools. This is going to be the course that everybody has to go through if they want to get to the next level of the community and start dealing with really uncomfortable stuff. And if we have these tools and we can get in cooperation with other people that want to go to these levels, you're going to move through your trauma and your triggers so fast, and you're going to get to a point where nothing phases you. You can sit with anybody, they can be yelling at you, they can be screaming at you, and you're just going to be like, why is this guy screaming at me? And eventually they're not even going to show up after a while, because you don't need that poke to go and look at why you shut down as soon as anybody gets angry. Well, you're scared of dealing with your anger, so you can't even approach that because you think you're just going to rip his head off. That's a trigger, that's a trauma, that's unexpressed energy, and that hasn't cleared us. So I hope this helped. I see there's been, I don't know, about 3 to 5 people on a regular basis, and this is going to stay up on my page, and I've got a recording of it. I'll put it on my YouTube page, and it'll be required reading in both my Awakening Sexuality private community. So message me if that's of interest. And in the Living Your Light community, there's a few rules that you need to follow so we can build a community to support this. But this is the gift I'm giving to everybody so that we can all level up and we can start dealing with this stuff and build a place where people that are comfortable with dealing with this can come in and support people as they move through it really quickly. And that's the biggest gift I could ever give to anyone. It's not going to be simple, but in a few months, you can get through this. When your whole lifetime has been hell sometimes, we really, really, really need these tools, and we need a place where they're applied in integrity and in comfort, and it's going to give everyone their freedom back. So I hope this was useful, and I'm open to any comments at the bottom. And I thank you for coming. I love you all, and we'll talk more soon. There's going to be a couple more videos. There's another one on self-responsibility, accountability, and vulnerability. These are other roots that we talked about a little bit here, and another one about communication. So look for those in the coming weeks. I love you all. I thank you for coming. Have a great night. See you soon. Bye.